Welcome back. This is the second installment of our base building video. Since you left me, what I have done is I have continued to lay down the rest of the defenses. I have generally grouped them into about 3 to 4 buildings or defenses in each compartment, and I've put walls around them. When I did that, I don't want any of the walls to be regular. I don't want any of the walls on the left side to generally look like the walls on the right side. And I don't want walls to come together at right angles. So instead of having these two walls here, so that just taking out this one center wall would give you access to 4 compartments, you don't want that. You don't want those walls to come together at a right angle like that, to where taking out one segment gives you too much access into the base. And I want pathing to be irregular. I want them to have to be concerned about where their troops will go, whether it's hogs or Valks. Hogs will jump over walls, but walls do make some amount of difference. They'll take the path of least resistance, and they'll generally avoid jumping over a wall if there's a equal value, equal distance target that doesn't require that. So that's kind of advanced. We'll get into that maybe much further down the line. But that's what I've done, is I've put the walls down, and you will see that some of the defenses are actually outside the walls at this point. Remember, the primary two things we said we were concerned about were hogs and dragons, and they don't care what the walls, for the most part, look like, or where they're at, or if things are even inside or outside of walls. So the third thing that we're concerned about is Valkyries, and or maybe some type of a go wipe type attack. But those attacks all require them to break into the base, and then if there are defenses and other buildings outside of the base that they need to get to, they then have to break back out. So that actually adds value, because once they're in a compartment, to get to an external defense, they're going to have to break through that wall section that divides them, and that kind of gives you extra free walls by having things outside the base that they would have to get to in order to defeat the base. So the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to start talking about trap placement. Traps, we're going to talk about spring traps a little bit. They're always going to go into single sections in between defenses, and it's best if those defenses are slightly offset. That improves the likelihood of triggering the trap, although where they're not offset is also just fine. It just increases the number of hogs, particularly that will be sprung if they're in places where they are offset. So we're going to go ahead and place those. Remember that your sweeper is a defensive building. The hogs will target it, so you can place things adjacent to your sweeper. And then the last thing that we're going to really talk about in this particular section is giant bombs. Now notice that there are a variety of different locations around the base where I could put a giant bomb. That's any space that's bigger than 2 by 2. So I have a bunch of 2 by 2 building spaces. I have several that are in between defenses. For instance, this one right here. I have some in the core here that are 2 by 2. We're going to focus on this one right here. We're going to turn this into a pretty super hog trap. We're going to use 2 bombs, 2 giant bombs, and we're going to make this into a double giant bomb, and that is really going to be effective against hogs. We've got it in between 2 defenses right there where the hogs will path to it, and so we're going to go ahead and place it like that. Now we still want all of our other giant bombs to be between defenses, so there are a couple other locations on the base, and we may have to, at this point you may get to it and you say, oh, there's a couple other things I need to do here, so I may need to move some things around to make things work. Now usually hogs are going to path to this bomb tower from the outside. So first off, I've got a bomb tower with 2 wizard towers adjacent to it, so that when it goes off, the combined effect should take out a good number of hogs. Just for good measure, I'm going to throw a giant bomb in there, and we're going to play with that idea. We're going to test this a little bit, and we're going to see how that works out, and see if that does additional damage. Now, one thing that I'm concerned about is I have an area here where a single heal spell or 2 heal spells could potentially cover that whole area. So that's something I'm a little bit worried about, but usually an attacker won't keep more than 1 heal spell for the core. So there's quite a bit in there for the hogs to do, and the pathing leads them in places where they won't necessarily path from one to the other of these giant bombs before that heal wears off. So let's just play with it. We're going to test this base out a little bit. You notice that I've left a gap here, and again, the way that I designed this base is we want dragons to think that this opening, this area right here, is where they want to go. So in addition to my 2 dragon walls here, I'm going to add in some trash buildings in here, and watch what kind of trash buildings I add. I'm not going to add a barracks because barracks don't have very many hit points. Instead of a barracks, I'm going to put a collector. Collectors have more hit points than barracks do. And additionally, I'm going to throw a couple of these builders huts in here. Now, builders huts have almost 0 hit points. A single dragon and a single breath will take them out. But remember, at this point in the attack, those dragons are all going to be packed up together. And every time the dragons go to retarget, that takes time. So I've added 4 things in there, and they're going to have to retarget each of those, and it's highly likely that multiple dragons are going to breathe on each of those builders' huts before moving on. So we're going to play with that idea and see how that works. We'll look at it, when we play test this base, and maybe we decide that that's not exactly the way that we want it to work out. The last thing that we're going to do today is we're going to talk about how and where to place our air traps. Now, again, we think that the dragons are going to come from this direction. That's the effect we're trying to create. So the first thing that I want to do is I want to kind of wide space. They're going to place some funneling dragons, and so I want to put some black bombs out where they're going to get to those funneling dragons, and deeper into the core is where I think that they're going to send. I'm concerned about them sending their loons in to get my air defenses. So what I'm going to do about that is I'm going to go ahead and pack a bunch of those red balloons in there where the balloons will get them, but the dragons will not. In the next video, what we're going to talk about is building the trash ring and what kind of things go in the trash ring. So when you come back, I will have placed a couple more of these traps. We'll finish this thing out, and then in the last video, we'll talk about how to build the trash ring.